my sweet spot tends to be in slasher horror, and the cop procedural just wasn't cutting it from that perspective. No pun intended.
Welcome to the show. I'm JasonShannon, author of the books The Zimmer Insurgency, The Hounds of Harrigan, and Tiger Blues. This is a podcast about indie writing, featuring excerpts, sample chapters, short stories, upcoming news, and interviews with a variety of other indie authors. Returning guest R.W. Duder is back again. This time we're talking about Amy Legacy, Book 2 in the Amy series. R.W., Rob, was previously on all the way back in episode 36, where we discussed Amy Book 1. This episode might be mildly spoilery for that first book, so maybe go and listen to that one first. But this is a slasher novel, so you're here for the blood and guts. Back in episode 36, Rob and I had some technical issues and some of the audio got cut. Most of what we lost was discussing serial killers and true crime, which I actually found was more relevant to Legacy, and we recreate most of that discussion here. I give you R.W. Duder. The last time we were talking about Amy, we unfortunately had some audio issues, and so much of the discussion on true crime and psychopathy got cut, but Amy 2 really leans into it, so we're going to try and recreate some of that here. I know in talking to you last time, you have a bit of a true crime interest as much as I do, and leaning into or learning about true psychopathy and how these people think and what drives them really is just a key interest. I love that you've gone there, and I love that you seem to have teased apart so many of the details so nicely.
Yeah, true crime, to me, true crime is kind of the horror of fiction, because of that genre of fiction, because it is horrific and it's real. You have psychopaths like Ted Bundy or BTK killer and stuff. I've watched documentaries, I've read books. I love that. I was a big fan, am a big fan of Anne Rule, who writes a lot of true crime. And yeah, I mean, I think certainly you're right. I really wanted to tease apart kind of that psychology of a serial killer beyond the fact of Amy, who is a unstoppable paranormal supernatural force. But this also teases apart someone who is human and someone who is just evil and a killer to the core.
One of my favorite podcasts to listen to is Last Podcast on the Left, which is kind of a true
Oh
crime
yes.
comedy one, and I'm sure people know who they are. They're huge, but they really dive into the deep psychology of some of these people, and yeah, just having done reading as well, the way that psychopaths think, and it's all them, and everyone else is kind
Mhm.
of like an object around them, and
Yep.
it really is like aliens are living among us almost.
Yeah, it really is. And I think as humans, we are intrigued by it. I mean, Netflix and other streamers have documentaries that are just insanely popular around true crime, because it's exactly like you said, we can't believe this is happening around us. Like, people exist like this, right?
And it's something I'm gonna get the number wrong, but it's something like 4% of the population are considered true psychopaths and
Whew.
titans of industry and politicians and lawyers and
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes, the criminal underworld as well. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really
Exactly.
it really is fertile ground for horror series.
It is. It absolutely is.
In book 1, so as you mentioned, Amy is kind of this semi-supernatural entity that is almost separated from the true crime aspect. But
Yeah.
book 1, it was her father that I thought you really nailed as
Mhm.
the infamous serial killer of the day that really stumped the cops and was
Mhm.
their axe to grind. In this one, you've gone I'm gonna go a little step further with Anton Wright, your secondary antagonist here,
Wow.
who is, again, perfectly encapsulates the sort of BTK or the Ted Bundy, the overly confident, super confident, again, sort of titan of the charisma's through the roof. Um,
Mhm.
but then, and maybe we're gonna go too spoilery here, but when he becomes aware of Amy, um, there is that longing in him to like find connection and community, and which again is so the life of just a true psychopath would be so lonely that
Yeah.
when they find kin of themselves, they you know they have that longing that's 10x what the average person would have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting thing in their relationship, which really drives the book, is that, and you touched on this too earlier, is that everyone around them is a pawn, but they look at each other and they go, "Oh, you're like me. You think like I do. You have this twisted sense of morality." And they kind of bond over it. But, and again, like you said, I don't want to get too spoilery, but um eventually that's gonna wear out. It's kind of there can be only one philosophy, and their world is too narrow thinking about themselves to have someone else in it. But for a good portion of the book, yeah, they're like, they found a kindred spirit in each other, so to speak.
Yeah, and this is again so reminiscent of the way things actually play out. You think about serial killer
Yeah,
pairs,
yeah,
Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, or
absolutely.
um, I know there's so many other names I'm forgetting, but
Mm,
they're attached to the hip almost, and then
yeah,
because they think only of themselves, when the pressure comes in, they turn on each other immediately.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, it's just such an interesting, and then you've got the supernatural element with Amy, but you've got the very rare, very human nature of Anton and sort of that dynamic between them. And I mean, right from get-go, I think Anton sees her as not only a kindred spirit, but something he can manipulate for his own gain. And Amy does that. That doesn't sit well with Amy very well.
Let's set the scene here. So
Yeah.
when in Amy 1, she was
Mhm.
6 years old, and I'm sure people should not be listening to this unless they've read your book and gone back and listened to the other one. But she's kind of semi-immortal, and you kind of set it up with a little bit of science as to how this could be feasible in book 1. But she just keeps kind of pressing on despite all injury. But she's 6 years old, which is just horrifying in itself. Now you jumped ahead and she's on the cusp of being 12, or she is
On the
12?
yeah, on the cusp, or 12, yes. Um, Interestingly, out of the Amy series, which is currently 5 books plus 2 spin-offs, this is the only book that she is aged to 12. So I won't give anything away beyond that, but Amy Legacy is kind of especially important to me from that perspective, in that, like, this is the only time we see her as a adolescent Amy rather than the 6-year-old Amy. So
That was gonna be my next question, is if, because you have a 6-year jump here, you've doubled her age, and me assuming the series is gonna continue chronologically on, did you plan that? I know we talked off mic about, this kinda set the scene and told you there could be a series here, but to
yeah,
jump ahead so far and cut that much of her life out of the
yes.
story, how much planning went into that, if any?
Like I mentioned before, when I wrote Amy, it wasn't necessarily supposed to be a series. I didn't see it that way, but then I saw the potential of creating this homage to slasher films and books and television, and Amy Legacy was the way I was going to expand that universe, because I think Amy 1 is pretty narrow in its direction, as far as, like, it's a complete story technically. But when you add Amy Legacy to it, it blows everything up in a different way. But yes, she is aged. Yes, we've moved 6 years, but the science created for this created for this is the key word. The science created for this enables me to kind of go in a different direction in future sequels. as far as not chronologically, the series is chronological. That'll really throw a question mark in your brain, but um there is, you know, science, and there's other antagonists that make this world and Amy even more of a threat than she already is. So
Yeah, that's really whet my appetite for book 3. So I'm gonna have to pick that one up from you next time I see you.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, wi was there feedback from your audience from reading book 1 that said there is more here, or was it more that you just kinda got enamored with the world and realized that there was potential, or was it a bit of both?
It was a bit of both. I think when I came up with Amy Legacy, and I'll backtrack a little bit. So when I was writing Amy Legacy originally, well, when I first came up with the concept, it wasn't Amy Legacy at all. It was a story about Anton Wright, who is the other serial killer, but he was the serial killer. It was a fairly, what I consider a straightforward, almost police procedural with some gore sprinkled in there. Of course, he was very, a wicked antagonist. But then as I started writing the first few chapters of it, I kept having this image of like, what would it be like to drop Amy into this story? And it was just like adding spice to the chili. Like it was just like, she fit so well into it. And I was looking for a way to expand the universe at that time. And yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting in the fact, like, if you read the first couple of chapters of Amy Legacy, it really gives you a finale to the original Amy story arc. Like, it kind of tells you what happens, and then there's this whole other story that continues on with Amy. But like originally, yeah, it was just Anton Wright, and had this idea for him as a character, and it was just it was just kismet that he also has the same initials as Amy Walker, which plays a part in the like I said, originally that wasn't the intention. It was just going to be a cop procedural, and then it kind of I was going to say it kind of bored me a little, but that's not what I mean. It needed something more. It wasn't cohesive. It wasn't coming together. And adding Amy really did that, I think. So, and the feedback that I got initially from ARC readers and anyone else that read it before I published it, the what I started to hear was, I liked Amy, but Amy Legacy just like better than the original. And that's huge. Like that, to have a sequel that is going to not only add on to the first, but even be potentially better is a dream come true for a writer, right? So yeah, the feedback I got definitely shaped it. Also, I'll mention the reason I started writing the story about Anton Wright was because I wanted to write something around a carnival. And the carnival, the thing with the Amy series is each book has a very specific setting. The first book was very rural, set in the city. And then Amy Legacy has this backdrop of this carnival, which I think small town carnivals, traveling shows like this are just creepy as hell. So it's the perfect setting for not only the story, but for Anton and Amy too. So
Yeah, and I can second the notion. You told me this, I think, when you sold me the book about many people say it's better than the original,
yeah,
and I totally agree. Like the
yeah,
Amy one was great, but it does have that sort of a lot of his introduction of this is
yes,
where the character is, this is who they are, this is the science behind it, this is yet another person in the
yeah,
crosshairs who, really showing that Amy is this monster.
yes,
Book 2, you're really just jumping into it and it's already at a 10 to go. So I second that. And what you were saying there about, originally it was just a cop procedural with Anton, and you were almost bored with it, but you kind of pulled back on that
Yeah,
word. Um, Obviously, whatever changes you made to the script in adding Amy in, I don't know the sauce behind that, but if it was just the story as is with Amy cut out and these police going after Anton, it would be a bit of a step down from Amy because you're
sure.
really at this sort of high point there,
Mhm.
which is maybe a genre thing because you're kind of supernatural slasher just down to cop procedural, and they're slightly different levels, maybe different genres, but that's maybe neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's you bang on. You're absolutely right. I mean, my sweet spot tends to be in slasher horror, and the cop procedural just wasn't cutting it from that perspective, no pun intended. And Amy, yeah, just changed everything about it. And Amy Legacy has some of my personal favorite moments with Amy, a lot of them with Anton, including the third act between them and the cops and that sort of thing. But also, two of my favorite Amy scenes are and again, I don't want to get too spoilery, but there's an older couple that are kind of her first victims after she escapes. And that scene lives in my head constantly. I just love that scene. And then additionally, um, the carnival itself, there are a number of scenes. Actually, even before there's a scene. There's a very typical, and I want to use the word typical because it's trope heavy, but I think it's really great. And that's a scene in the woods with some teenagers that she comes across. Like that, writing that scene to me was just like nostalgia. Like it was just like pulling those tropes out and making it very visceral and exciting and fun. And yeah, those two scenes kind of live rent free in my head even long after I've written them. So
Yeah, that teenagers in the woods scene, I got that sense as I was reading it. It's like almost like you're stepping away from the main story, and it is
yeah,
super
yeah,
trope heavy. It's like,
yeah.
okay, we're on just like a little wink and a nod to slasher fans here. We're gonna get back to the main program in a second.
That's exactly it. That I wanted to make sure that Amy still kept that homage intact. A lot of people will have read the first Amy book and pointed out some obvious comparisons to like John Carpenter's Halloween or Friday the 13th. And that was heavy in the first book. Not as heavy, I don't think, in Legacy, but I wanted to make sure it was still in place. Like I wanted to make sure those scenes were still there for the fans. And yeah, had a ton of fun writing them. Always do. So
What you were saying a little bit ago about the carnival was very central and
oh yeah.
part of your process.
Yeah.
And carnivals are just creepy. Like
They are.
I grew up in Belleville, which had this Belleville Fair that came by every
Yep.
year. And I guess I was always there during the day as a child, but I could totally see like some
Oh,
really freaky stuff happening at night that would scare the crap out of me.
we my daughter and I often go to those little traveling carnivals, and we do often go at night, and they're so fun. Like I mean, they cost a pretty penny, but they're fun. But my mind is just going the entire time I'm there. And when I was writing Amy Legacy, the biggest thing was I tried to ride as many carousels as I could because there was something about sitting on the carousel, just watching it spin with the music at night and the lights and the mirrors. And I'm like, this is just crazy creepy. Like you throw, 12-year-old Amy into this and you got a home run.
It never goes into like clown territory, but it's kind of clown adjacent. And a lot of
Sure.
people have this like horror of clowns. So you're
Yeah.
kind of hitting that nail on the head as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in a way that I've never done before. I don't think I have any clowns in any other books, and I didn't want to make Anton a clown. In fact, I think his role leading this ragtag group of circus performers or carnival performers is so important because he has this gravitas. He has this, instinct to bring other people in and to lead people. Meanwhile, he has this whole other side to him, to the point where even when people, even when he's being accused of these things, the people around him are like, well, no, I'm still going to listen to him because he's my boss and I like him and he's got this energy. And so it's hard to believe that he leads this double life, right?
Which again is perfectly true crime in the sense
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
like a true psychopath often is just like charismatic out the wazoo because
yeah,
they're not they're not seeing any embarrassment or anxiety in public speech or anything. They're just doing full on what they think they should be doing, which is
absolutely.
magnetic in a way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the story Amy Legacy opens with a prologue that is all about Anton, and you get a sense of this alternate ego that he lives, this horrible side of him, before you even get to see the charismatic side. But I think with that character, it's just very believable. Like, it's just, I get why people don't see him as a killer or they trust him in certain ways. And I think too, the other really interesting thing about Anton is Amy's father, even up until this point, is still a factor for her in some way. We don't really know how. We know that in the first book, he killed her and he drained her soul in some fashion. And I kind of liked the daddy issues that came with putting her beside Anton. I think that really worked well too. So,
Another aspect of Anton as like the perfect psychopath is the fact that he's doing these killings, and I don't remember if it was more than one or if it was just the one killing. You mentioned how he was impotent and couldn't get it up,
yes. Yeah.
which is so often the case,
Yep.
which is why serial killers veer into like sexual depravity because that seems to
Yeah.
be the only thing that will do it for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted him. And it's hard to give someone like Amy the perfect partner because Amy's so screwed up in her own way and obsessed with death and blood and how people die. And so to be able to give her a friend, if we can call it that, but to give her a partner, but also an equally disturbed adversary. I just wanted Anton to be as scary as she was, basically.
You mentioned before we started recording that you kind of looked over the book again. I
Yeah.
guess in preparation for this, or just because you were at a show
Yeah.
or something,
No, in
and you
preparation for this. Yeah.
yeah, and you hadn't read it in a while.
Yeah.
What's that like coming back to it after so long? Did anything surprise you, or were you pleasantly, pleased at where things were?
I was pleasantly surprised. Not surprised, pleased is a better word of putting. Um, it's also the first time, honestly, that I've read my own work outside of, like, I almost read it just for enjoyment. Like, I picked up my own book and read it. And I don't typically do that, right? But this was so interesting to not read it from an editorial perspective or that I needed to change anything, but rather just read it the way it was meant to be, absorbed. And I really, really liked it. I see where I was trying to expand the universe because with Amy Legacy, uh, a perfect example of not realizing that this was going to be a series is I didn't call it Amy 2. I called it Amy Legacy, and I've kept that. It is obviously the second book, but to me, this was about expanding the world more to get more out of it. And I think I feel like I nailed that, and it leads very nicely into the third book. I think if anybody picks up the book, I believe the first chapter of the third book is included. I could be wrong on that, but so you can get a taste of where it's going. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had a good time reading it. Those two scenes I mentioned, the older couple and the scene in the woods, they stood out for me again when I reread it. And I liked the protagonists too, like the cops that are chasing them down. It's different from the first one, and it's they have different stakes, and it just really I think it catapults the series into really viable waters.
For sure. I want to touch on the protagonists as well, the different cops,
Yeah.
but just quickly, what you were describing about reading it not from an editorial point of view, I've
Mhm.
had that experience too, where with the Zimmer Insurgency, my first book, I
Yeah,
kept meaning to go back and read it and enjoy it, but you get busy with editing other things or
of
writing
course.
other things, and 10 years suddenly go by and I didn't reread it until the audiobook. And I kind of went into the audiobook knowing like I'm not editing this, I'm not changing anything. There's already enough on the plate to just record it, so I'm just going to enjoy it as is. And again, I was pleased at how it turned out because I was remembering lots of things I didn't like about it, but
Sure.
most of that was things that I'd cut before the final draft. But my mind had fused it with like, oh,
Yeah.
this is still in there, and that's
Sure.
where my mind fixates. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, for writers that are listening, I recommend picking up your own book and read it from a perspective of just a reader, because whether you're pleasantly surprised or not, I don't know. But yeah, in our case, I think, there's a lot of good that comes from reading something that's older, and it's not going to change at this point, right? It's released, it's out there. So yeah.
and so often too, like even if you dislike what you read, it's coming from a certain time in your life.
Yes,
And
that's true too.
you might not be able to go back and recreate it or fix it, or even if it's self-published, you can just publish a new version on Amazon.
That's true.
But
Yeah.
if you need to like rewrite the climactic scene, it's like I was 26 when this came out, I'm almost 40 now, like I'm in a different place in my life, I can't tap into that angst or that passion, or I care about different things now. So it's a
That's
matter
such
of
a good point. Yeah, such a good point. Yeah, it just changes, right? And it's similar, like when I read something, for example, I'm rereading Stephen King's It right now. And one of my favorite books, read it in my 20s, just absolutely loved it. And now I'm really struggling to get through it. And I think it's just a different, you have different priorities, you're different personality than you were. And it's the same with writing. I mean, you're absolutely right. Amy Legacy is a snapshot of how I was writing at that time, and I wouldn't change it for anything, honestly.
OMG, girlfriend! Are you curious about buying one of my books, but you're not sure if you're ready for dark musings on nihilism versus fatalism? Obviously here I'm talking about the Hounds of Origin. Or femme fatales killing corrupt government officials is not your thing because it's so last season. Come on, girl, I'm talking about the Moon Panther here. Or maybe the nuclear sword of Damocles in Rain's agenda hits a little too close to home. Well, good news. Attila the Valley Girl is my shortest and simplest book. There's no deeper theme that hijacks the story. No social commentary, no unnecessary subplots. It's just the platinum blonde scourge of God, threatening Rome while dressed in hot pink. What's not to love? You can pick up Attila the Valley Girl for only the cost of a venti double mocha caramel espressiato, or join my mailing list for an exclusive link to the free ebook audiobook combo. Alright, Eastern Europe's not going to conquer itself, so bye, and you can go back to the show.
let's talk about your protagonist. So,
Yeah.
Alex Russo was basically kind of one of your main characters in the first book,
Yeah.
and he shows up here. Maybe I guess his story arc is fairly early on. I don't know if you want to talk about what happens there, but then he's quickly taken over by it's Scott, right? The other guy.
Scott. Yeah. Scott Garcia, who was in the first book as well. He was their lieutenant, who was very much, um, he didn't believe them that Amy was the perpetrator of all these crimes. And now things have changed drastically. He's gotten the unfortunate proof that he needs, and he's on, he's picking up the pieces that Alex Russo unfortunately left behind, and he brings along his young partner with him.
When you were writing this, was it always the plan to shift the focus to him and make him the focal point character?
Yeah, I think I hadn't found, like, as you continue in the Amy series, after book 4, so 4, 5, and 6, when we release it, um, they're the protagonists, the main protagonist stays the same in 4 and 5, and 6 as well. But for Amy, Amy Legacy, Amy 3, those books, I hadn't nailed down who I wanted to be the ultimate protagonist to Amy's antagonist. So switching to Scott was a way of kind of wrapping up Alex Russo's story. I wanted to move on. I knew I wanted to do a certain setting with number 3. And in order to do that, I had kind of chosen Scott Garcia as my protagonist. So I moved forward with him, and he's he's similar to Alex in a lot of ways, but he also has the benefit of already knowing that Amy is what she is. So
But he also gets paired up with a new sort of young partner, right?
yes,
Who
yes,
then has to
exactly.
learn all this stuff himself.
Yes, that's true. We've got it's almost the reverse of the first Amy book, where Alex's partner Joe was like, I think this is Amy, I think this is Amy, I think this is Amy. And Alex was like, no, 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 until the unfortunate last minute. But in this book, it's the senior cop who's like, this is Amy, this is Amy, this is Amy. And Asher's just kind of like, I don't buy this. It's not real kind of thing. And that's one of the things with the protagonists from both Amy and Amy Legacy, is that element of belief. Like, we don't, in a real world, we can't imagine anything like Amy. At least I hope not. Um, but in the fictional world, yeah, it's a matter of finding out with enough time to save yourself that Amy is what she is, you know?
And there's also I'm gonna forget her name, but like a homicide detective from a different
Oh,
division
yes. Laura, yeah.
who, yeah, and she's like investigating. Is it one of Anton's victims or is it just another?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Laura comes on board as the detective on the Anton side of things. She's a very important player in the overall story for the first 3 books. Well, for Legacy in number 3 anyway. But she gets a bit of a backstory as well, and a reason for her to do the things she does. I'm skirting around giving away any spoilers, but
another character who may have some spoilers here. We can see how much we want to reveal here is Thomas
yeah,
Raines,
yes,
who I know we talked about in the last episode
yeah,
as this kind of you keep mentioning the word universe, and you're not just
yeah.
talking about Amy, the Amy series here, because Thomas Raines kind of jumps around between a few other books as well.
He does, yeah. So my books, I get asked often what order to read all my books in. And the truth is, it doesn't really matter outside of the Amy series. Um, but it is a shared universe. There are things in Only the Dead that we'll talk about, broken, or there's a lot of cross pollination there with characters. But Thomas Raines is my big bad. He's like, a billionaire. He's a scientist. He's a doctor. He also has kind of insane, egotistical, evil plans. And when he finds Amy, he's fascinated by it. And we first meet Thomas Raines as the man in yellow in Desolation. And we find out more about him in the Amy series than what's given in Desolation. But even still, Desolation was his origin story, and he mentions it, he brings it up in his own way, and yeah, Thomas Raines has always been my big villain.
Yeah, and Desolation is one I have not yet had the pleasure of picking up. I'll have to do that when I get Amy 3 as well. Um, there's a very I'll get to the quote in 1 second, but just at what point did you realize you wanted to bring everything together as like one universe? Was that always the plan, or was it like, I'm gonna have some Easter eggs here, some character crossover?
Yes, the latter of that. Yeah, it wasn't planned. And you can bet by that, because there are certain things that don't necessarily fit, but the Easter egg is nice. But yeah, I'm not sure when it came to be, except that I think the first character that I crossed over was Father Noah White, who was a priest in Desolation. He came back for Isolation. He's the main character in The Harrowing. He also shows up in Broken and Art of Dying. So he was kind of the first character that I was like, oh, I can move him around and use him in different perspectives. But there are a lot of Easter eggs around the Amy series, in other parts of the story. For instance, in the first Amy book, we had the detective Casnanaimi, who was the sister of our Desolation villain. So she was a different character, but she had that connection to Desolation. So I think within probably my first 3 or 4 books, I had things so intertwined that I had to keep it going. I had to keep the shared universe going. So
It's always fun. I used to do that with little Easter eggs. Like the canon doesn't line up at all, so they're not shared universe, but one book would reference the next, and it would be something like a little in universe thing that no one would pick up unless
yeah,
you're or like a real fan.
absolutely,
Um,
100%. It's almost just for us as writers, you know.
well, I've seen it done before. Guy Gavriel Kay, who's an author I love,
Yeah.
and he most of his stuff is in a shared universe that is like alt history Europe, fantastical Europe, but
Oh
there's
yeah.
2 moons in the sky,
Yeah.
so that you know that this is not real, this is not based on actual history. He's not
Uh,
writing historical fiction.
right.
But then he moved over to China, and again, it's fictional map, fictional country name, all that, but it's retelling parts of Chinese history. But he's only got 1 moon because he wanted to have a separate universe. But then he has a
Interesting.
then he has a poet show up in there, and the empress is like commenting or complimenting his poetry and saying, "Oh, I love this," and he's so imaginative and so on. And he says, "I would like to also write a book or a poems that would take place with a world with 2 moons. Would you like that, my
Oh,
lady?" And
I
it's like,
love it. I love
yeah,
it.
like I, the first time I read it, I didn't get it. I was just like, "Oh, he's just rambling
Yeah.
on about
Yeah.
poetry." And then it's like, "Oh, I see what you're doing here."
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I've done it so many times now that I would have to go through to list all the Easter eggs. I would have to go through my own work again to see what I threw in there. But yeah, there's a lot of crossover when it comes to the Amy series.
Yeah. Now the quote for Thomas Raines, um, I don't remember where in the book this comes up, but this really kind of shows his versatility and jumping back and forth. It's
Yeah.
I've seen things you can only dream about. I've seen fierce, angry spirits tear people apart. I've seen human beings trapped in interdimensional prisons of my creation, but I've never seen anything like Amy Walker. She could hold the secrets to unlocking parts of our body and brain that we've only dreamed about.
Yes.
When you
Yes.
got to that line, I can picture you sitting there writing this, just smiling the whole time, being like, this, I'm going to throw everything in the kitchen sink in here because this is the, the vortex at the center of it all.
Yes. Yeah. And that truly, like, that is his, his MO through the entire series is how can I learn more about Amy and what she's capable of, and then use that for my own benefit. And that was also the case with Desolation, where he wanted to trap this spirit to see what it was capable of. And now with Amy, it's less about trapping her and more actually about letting her loose and seeing what she is capable of. And the thing I love about Thomas Raines, and I mentioned this with Anton Wright, is the daddy issue aspect. Thomas Raines is very much a father figure in only that way that he could be to a supernatural killer. Like, Amy seems to go along with him as long as it benefits her and she gets what she wants.
Let's talk about Amy's mother for a little bit because
Yeah.
she shows up here as well. She's kind of tied in with Alex Russo and later with Thomas Raines.
Mhm.
Um, as I recall, she's not super present in Amy 1. I think she shows up
Nope.
for a little bit.
Mhm.
What was the thought process to bringing her in to be such a central focal point?
Yeah, great question. So Sarah Walker, Amy's mother, originally in my mind, I'll tell you the reason I named her Sarah. The reason I named her Sarah was, in my mind, she would be the Sarah Connor of Amy. In other words, she would be chasing her down, trying to stop her. That was the initial idea. That didn't come to fruition. Instead, you have this woman who believes her daughter is still in there. She wants to actually, like, reverse what's happened to her. And I mean, Sarah Walker has been through a traumatic experience. You assume her to be dead early in the Amy book. Um, and she turns into a huge pawn for Thomas Raines because Amy, she is the only biological parent that Amy has left. So for Amy, she sees a connection. She might even feel a connection there. She knows it's her mom. Um, but there's still that pull to the dark side. But that sort of interaction between, and she's also, meaning Sarah Walker is also a blockade. Like, when you first read Amy Legacy, she gets in the way. Like, Alex Russo is like, this girl is dangerous. We need to eliminate her. And Sarah Walker is just constantly the one saying, no, 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 she's still my daughter. She's still in there. So she became something of an empathetic character. She has a really interesting arc through Amy 3, which I won't give away, but yeah, she went from being potential hero in my brain to being more of a catalyst to Amy's behavior. So
Yeah, and I think you thread that line of Amy recognizing her as a mother versus still
yeah,
the pull to the dark side, and you're
yeah,
not entirely sure what Amy is actually thinking there.
right, exactly. Yes, yeah.
You mentioned earlier that Amy 6 is going to be coming out probably New Year.
Probably New Year, hopefully quarter 1, maybe quarter 2 of the new year. A draft has been written. I'm actually co-writing it with with my co-writer. Um, we have a draft done. We're just going through it to make it as good as it can be. But yeah, Amy 6 is absolutely on the horizon. Um, my, I also get asked a lot, if I have a vision for the full Amy series, and I do, and I've had one for a long time, and 6 and 7, which I am writing somewhat simultaneously, 7 will be closely released behind 6, possibly next year. But all to say, the main series will end with 7. Now, I'm not saying there isn't other things going on in the Amy verse, but as far as the main series, 6 and 7 will tie up that whole story arc.
And at what point did you realize it was going to be 7 books?
Ooh, good question. Somewhere around book 4, I got this idea in my head for a main backbone of story that goes through Amy 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but it's a protagonist. It's a final girl. It's like trope heavy in that way. But I had a very specific line that I wanted to follow, and there's lots around that. Like there's a lot of story that came from that main line, but the main line has not changed. I know how this I can tell you right now, I won't, but I could tell you right now how this whole thing ends. So I've got that much planned out, and I think it'll be good to I think there's a lot of other stories in this universe. Amy clearly is unstoppable and unkillable in her own way. I mean, even if you look at the spin-offs, I did Amy in Space a couple of years ago, which was insanely fun. But if you look at that from a whole series perspective, she's still going in the future. So there's stories that can be told for much longer than what I have planned. But the main series will end with 7.
I was going to ask about the spin-offs because I haven't gotten there yet, and I'm sure I'll ask this question when I do, but is there a difference in tone or pacing or anything as you're writing that? Because obviously, with the Amy in Space is a little bit more tongue-in-cheek than these
100%.
ones.
100%. But still very dark, gory, gritty. I think the thing I loved about Amy in Space is it didn't change Amy at all. It changed the setting significantly, like they're on a space station in the future. But Amy is still Amy. She remains unchanged and unwilling to give up her right to find out all about death and how to kill people in various ways. And it gave me a lot of different an environment like that gives you. I can see why other horror series have gone to space, because it gives you a completely different setting to work with. But it is very much tongue in cheek. It was meant to be a nod towards those films, but also something a little cheeky and different that Amy could do. Um, it has Amy, Amy in Space has one of the best, in my opinion, it has one of the best, worst lines in the end when she's being sucked out of an air vent or out of an air lock into space, and my protagonist says, "Give her the constellation prize." And I absolutely love how much I hate that line. It's so bad, and yet it works so well. So that's what you're going to get out of Amy in Space. It's a shorter book. It's fun. It can be read anywhere in the series, but it also is meant to tie in. Like, it doesn't do anything that's outside of the main series lore.
Speaking of shorter length, I've got the first 2 of them, and is it fair to say novella length or short novel?
Yeah, with the Amy series, some of them are shorter. Amy 3 is the shortest, I believe. Um, and I never I never think much about length. I mean, I certainly try. I how do I put this? I don't think much about length when I'm writing because I want it to be the story that I want it to be. So if it ends up being 30,000, 50,000, 80,000, then so be it. And that's how I felt when I released Amy 3 was like, well, this is a lot shorter. I think it's probably 45 or 50,000 words. So down a step from the first Amy, which is just over 70,000, and Amy Legacy, I think, is close to that. But yeah, Amy 3 is a lot shorter. 4 and 5 are closer to the 70 length. But for me, it just doesn't, as long as the story comes out right and I'm telling the story that I think needs to be told, I'm not so pressed about the length.
That's a good bit of advice to have. Like,
Yeah.
an author should pay attention to like pacing and maybe the
Yeah.
magnitude of the
Yeah.
story, but
Yep.
don't extend it just because you've been
Yeah.
told that publishers look for a certain length.
100%. Absolutely. I don't want to tell a story and then overtell something just so I can hit 60,000 words. Like it just doesn't, I want everything to work together, right?
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before, but I've been working with on the verge between novella and short novel length for this Yang
Yeah.
Yoshiko series,
Yeah.
and which is a bit of a step in a different direction for me. But it is like you just go with it. You just start with
Yeah.
the problem, and it's your straight shot to the end, pretty much.
Absolutely.
And it does affect the story, the pacing, the
Oh,
characters, when you have to set things up and foreshadow things. It is a different beast to work with, but I never sat back and said like, "Oh, I need to hit 90,000 words on this. I'm gonna have to
exactly.
double the length." Like that would be a complete waste of the story that's involved.
I agree. Totally agree.
Um, I know that the Amy series is your sort of bread and butter, is the best one you've got in terms of sales.
Yes.
Are your fans like clamoring to get Amy 6?
Yeah, I get the occasional email that says, "Where's Amy 6?" And I know I've had a few people in person who have been I have one woman, Carol, shout out Carol if you're listening to this. She has bought the entire Amy, she's bought all my books, but she refuses to read Amy until it's all done, the entire series. So she is just chomping to get Amy 6. But yes, people are asking for it. It really, Amy just, it outperforms everything. My lifetime sales, it's like Amy and Desolation are the top two, and then in subsequent order, Amy 3, Amy 4, Amy 5, Amy in Space, The Retreat. People just really resonate with it, and I appreciate that so much. And it makes me realize that I'm heading in the right direction, so it helps write things too.
I think I met that woman at the Collingwood show last
Yeah, yeah,
year or the year
yes,
before,
yes,
and
yes.
she told me the same thing. Like, "Oh, I've got his whole series. I can't start until he finishes it."
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so we're gonna keep our eyes peeled for Amy 6, which is gonna be early-ish 2027,
Early-ish 2027, yes, yep.
and I'm sure there will be an update here on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, I'll keep everybody informed. I'll mention, just because we didn't hit on it, so I do have some other stories in the Amy universe in the works. In fact, I'm working on one now called Incarcerated, which will come between Amy 5 and Amy 6 and kind of bridge the gap between the two of them. It's not an Amy story, it's an Amy universe story. So you can expect some Thomas Rain shenanigans and a new character that continues on to Amy 6 that I'm really enjoying. And we also get a lot more lore from Incarcerated because it kind of tells us what Amy is capable of and how that power can be harnessed to be used to someone else. So interesting story, really coming along really well. Um, probably this year if I can pull it off. Yeah, so Incarcerated is coming. I also have a short story that I wrote for the Amy series, or rather the Amy universe, called Sins of the Father, which actually focuses back on David Walker. It's a prequel to the original Amy. Very short story. Not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but fans can, stay in touch. Find my stuff at darkcrowbooks.com and keep an eye out because it's all coming soon.
Yeah, and that's your new website now, right? Dark Crow Books?
It is, darkcrowbooks.com. Yes, I had some unfortunate problems with bots on my former site, so I had to shut her down. And myself and my writing partner opened Dark Crow Books, and you can find all my books on there, available in paperback and ebook.
And have you got any shows coming up that you want to talk about?
I do. I have Collingwood this weekend, Collingwood Comic-Con at the Legion. That'll be good fun. I'm spending a lot of Saturdays close to home, which is Owen Sound, Ontario. Shallow Lake, which is about 10 minutes outside of Owen Sound. I'll be there every weekend. After this weekend, for the next 2 or 3 weekends, I'll be in Shallow Lake. Got all my books and some cool merch too on my table. So,
all right, R.W. Duder, thanks for coming back on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
Have you ever finished a mystery novel that left your brain in a pretzel and immediately wanted to talk about the ending with someone else? Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Jerry Marchioni, author of The Utopia, and I'm excited to tell you about my latest novel. If you're like me and you enjoy compelling characters, twists you won't see coming, and mysteries that keep you guessing until the very last page, I'd love for you to check out my mystery crime thriller, Who Killed Arnold Muller? Join journalist Natalie Flint as she dives deep into the decade-old murder that once rocked her hometown to its core. Experience the investigation through her eyes as she interviews those closest to the case, including Tracy Kolsky, the imprisoned killer who has never wavered in proclaiming her innocence. Along the way, Natalie uncovers long-buried secrets about that fateful night, some of which may hit far closer to home than she ever imagined. Who Killed Arnold Muller is a fast-paced mystery filled with suspense, family secrets, and moral dilemmas, all centered around one unsettling question. What happens when the truth is more dangerous than the lie? Who Killed Arnold Muller is available now on Amazon, and you'll find a link to order your copy in this episode's show notes. If you'd like to learn more about me, my books, or just connect, you can find me on Instagram at Christian Jerry Marchioni, where I share behind-the-scenes looks at my writing process, book updates, and news about future projects. Thanks so much for listening. Happy reading.
Thanks to Rob for coming back on the podcast. He has a new website shared with his co-author Damien Richard at darkcrowbooks.com. I am currently seeking beta readers for my upcoming book, Taming the Laser Leopard. You will receive a free ebook version of the current draft and a list of a few questions to be answered after reading, which will help to provide feedback before publication. I'm also asking you to leave an honest review on Goodreads. If you are interested, please email me today at jm1shannon@gmail.com. The book is 51,000 words and would have an R rating if it were a movie. Coming up, I will be at the Cogs and Clockwork Steampunk Festival in Fergus, Ontario on September 12th and CanCon in Ottawa, October 16th.